Alright, we're at the last episode. I skipped episodes 8 through 12 because the series is already over, and because episode 13 has major implications for future events. As of the making of this video, I've made it to chapter 600 of Lord of the Mysteries, which places me in volume 3. All I'm saying is that I'm incredibly excited for the future seasons of this series, especially since they're going to do more episode counts per season and supposedly have no drop in quality. Anyways, episode 13 is without a doubt the best episode in this show. The OST is insane, the fight with Magos and by proxy the true creator was incredible, and all the twists and turns afterwards surprise you. For this video, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to include sections from Volume 1 to better explain things that happen in the latter half of the episode. I also want to give extra information about what is told because the anime does skip over what is said in the novel. And I also want to showcase how well written it is, and as well as give you a little bit of insight on where the series is going to be headed for Season 2. Like I said, there's a lot to look forward to. Episode 13, Light. So to start off, we have the fight with Magos. In the previous episode, Dunn and Klein went to the Channis Gate to take some sealed artifacts that could help them subdue her. These artifacts are 2-105 Blood Vessel Thief and St. Selena's Ashes, which are a Grade 1 sealed artifact. The Blood Vessel Thief can steal abilities from its targets as long as they're within range, but it has a lower chance of succeeding against higher sequence beyonders. It also steals the life of whoever's using it, which basically just ages you. St. Selena's Ashes are the main seal in the Channis Gate. It's able to release black threads which can entangle their target, which will restrain them, acting as a very powerful seal. We know that in episode 12, Dunn is manipulated into taking the ashes from the Channis Gate via whispers that he hears. The fight continues, and their plan is to make it to the Memorial Hall. Klein uses ritualistic magic to pray to the Evernight Goddess in order to slow down Magos. Eventually, they make it to the Memorial Hall. Dunn orders Leonard and Klein to stay back and count to 10 because he's going to use the ashes on Magos. She struggles as Dunn opens the box containing St. Selena's ashes, and Dunn is thrown aside. After 10 seconds of counting, Leonard and Klein come into the fight, and Klein pulls out a bright yellow charm. It seems like she's dead, but Klein's clown intuition tells him that something's wrong, and his very slight premonition saves him from being killed. His heart is scratched by Magos. Leonard saves Klein by using Blood Vessel Thief, and Klein takes a potion to help heal himself. Magos lets out a scream, and everyone's trying to get away from the building. The music changes, and a person is walking towards the destruction. The person walks up to the officer who's escorting everyone and shows them an Evernight Goddess pendant. It's someone from the church, and they're let through. Back to the fight, and Leonard gets caught off guard and is swept off his feet. He's thrown into a column and he passes out. Klein takes out his second sun charm, but it's thrown away by the tentacle. The Evernight Man continues walking towards the scene. We are then shown the scene from the very beginning of the anime, and we all know how it ends. Klein dodges the tentacles and jumps. The Evernight Man is still walking. And Magos throws everything at Klein, and he throws out a tarot card with the Fool on it. Klein is impaled by the tentacle. but then the scene shatters. This is because Klein is actually inside a dream created by Dunn, so he's actually unhurt. Dunn takes some damage, using his nightmare powers to constrain Magos for a second. Klein's able to pick up his sun charm, as it's his chance to use it on her, but the cry of a baby immediately makes his eyes start to bleed. Dunn is thrown back, and Klein looks up at Magos, hundreds of little baby hands emerging from her body. Lightning strikes outside, creating the silhouette of the true creator in the clouds. Klein's down, Dunn's losing consciousness, and Leonard's status is unknown. Dunn picks up the box containing St. Selena's ashes and starts to walk towards Magos. He puts his pipe in his mouth and his hand to his chest. Dunn takes his beating heart out of his body and places it inside the box of Selena's ashes. A blue flower bed takes up the entire memorial hall, as his sacrifice has enhanced the artifact. Magos' attack is deflected, and we see the dead Nighthawks remembered in the memorial hall come place their hands on Dunn, who has consumed their characteristics. With the help of the ashes and his nightmare powers, Dunn stops Magos from being able to move, with bloody tears shutting down his face. Dunn calls out Klein's name, and we see Kenley and Old Neil. Klein's tears cover the golden charm in his hand, and he injects his spirituality into the charm. Klein's final charm finishes the job, and Dunn's heart is still beating inside the box. Dunn looks back and smiles at Klein, his pipe falling out of his mouth.
克莱恩，我们拯救了天根。
Dunn's heart stops beating, and he falls to the ground, his eyes fixing on Klein as they close. In Dunn's final moments, he thinks of Dali, who is still in Backland. Klein calls out for his captain, but is only met with silence. His desperate attempts to save Dunn don't do a thing. He's already gone. Klein is then stabbed from behind, and his heart is taken out of his body. While on the ground, he looks at the man responsible, who picks up St. Selena's ashes. This man is Ince Zangwill, the former Archbishop of the Church of the Evernight Goddess, who we were only told once about. We were told that he defected from the church and stole a Grade 0 artifact, which was a quill that did not require any ink to be used. We then hear a clock ticking, and the scene changes. A voice starts speaking, talking about long-awaited freedom. This is actually the quill speaking to us. The anime cuts out a decent amount from what's said in the book, so I will now read from the book. Chapter 210, Story. In a Tianjin suburb, there was a house with a green lawn. The house had a garden that had begun to wither at the beginning of September. Attached to the house was a crimson chimney. There was a desk next to the window in the bedroom of that house. An ordinary notebook was spread open on the table. A slightly pale hand flipped the notebook to the very first page, then it quickly flipped to the back. As the paper flipped, rows of words appeared faintly. Regents, a member of the Secret Order, sold the Antigonus family's notebook as an ordinary ancient book by accident due to the influence both of weariness and illusions. It was a coincidence that made logical sense. Affected by the calling of the Antigonus family's bloodline, the notebook secretly affects its owners, one after the other. After repeated changes in ownership, it came to Tianjin. It fell into the hands of the members from the Aurora Order, Sirius Arapis, and Hanas Vincent. After they flipped through the content that temporarily appeared in the notebook and copied the corresponding potion formulas, Sirius and Hanas were worried that the Secret Order, who were good at divination, would track them down. After discussing it, they decided to avoid the risk by selling it to another person. They didn't wait for Mr. Z's reply, perhaps because he stayed at Enmut Harbor. Through Sirius's introduction, Hanas got to know Welch McGovern from the Coy University's Department of History. Then, Hanas sold the Antigonus family's notebook to McGovern as an ordinary ancient book. Subsequently, Sirius was attracted by the treasure that was said to exist on the main peak of the Hornachus mountain range. He started to visit the Deweyville Library and research the mountain. He didn't think that there would be any problems, so he left his real address and name. That aligned with his personality. During this process, he acquainted himself with Lanavis, who was reading up on information about iron mines to set up a scam. Lanavis's hidden lunacy and swindling ability were well appreciated by Sirius. He decided to nurture him into a member of the Aurora Order. Of course, before that, an investigation was inevitable. Sirius covertly informed Lanavis about the evil ritual of praying to the true creator to deliver his spawn into this world. But he knew that the possibility of Lanavis succeeding was very low, because the difficulty level of the ritual was very high, and the requirements were very harsh. However, the latter expressed a strong interest in the matter, tempted by the possibility of obtaining a deity's approval. He planned to complete the ritual simultaneously as he carried out his plans of establishing his steelworks company. The cunning Lanavis could tell that there was something fishy about Sirius Arapis, but for his personal goal, he didn't expose him. He visited Hood Eugen in the asylum once again. They had known each other long ago, and they knew their respective situations. After a dark divination, the Antagonist family's notebook was awakened fully. Welch and his classmate died. The lucky survivor, Klein Moretti, sent it to Ray Bieber's house under the influence of the notebook. It was a destined ending. Many rows were scribbled off and new content followed. For some baffling reason, and a lack of sufficient explanations, Klein didn't commit suicide after that and somehow managed to stay alive. In the Nighthawks investigation of Welch's case that followed, he met Dunn Smith and joined the Nighthawks. Although it already exceeded Ince Zangwill's description, it didn't affect the development of the story. Bacchus and his brothers were down in their luck. They lost their last chip at the gambling tables and were drowning in debt. In a bid to obtain money, they decided to kidnap and blackmail the somewhat wealthy individuals. When they were looking for their final hideout, they chanced upon the room opposite Ray Bieber's apartment. By then, Ray Bieber was already seduced by the power offered by the Antigonus family's notebook. He hoped to digest the gift left behind by his ancestors. However, he was in a semi-insane state, and he couldn't make the best and safest choice. He abandoned his dead mother, but he continued remaining in Tingeon City. He only found a more elusive spot to carry out his digestion ritual. It was truly pathetic. If he had been slightly smarter, the story could have been even more complicated, but his decision was made based on his instincts and his poor state of mind. Backus and company purchased weapons and took the youngest son, Elliot, of the tobacco merchant Vic Roy, and held him for ransom. Finally, they successfully carried out the abduction and took Elliot back to the apartment opposite Ray Bieber's. Vic Roy's butler was entrusted with looking for help from a security company. Because of Welch's mysterious death, security companies were short on hands. Clee chanced upon a delivery man and happened to discover the existence of the Blackthorn Security Company. Leonard Mitchell and Klein accepted the job. Relying on their Beyonder powers, they quickly saved the merchant's son. Regrettably, Klein didn't immediately realize that the clues to the Antigonus family's notebook were in the apartment opposite them. However, his spirituality reminded him in his dream. As such, the Tingeon Nighthawks discovered corresponding clues. Sealed Artifact 2-049 arrived in Tingeon. With the aid of the Antigonus family's puppet, Dunsmith led the Nighthawks to find Ray Bieber before interrupting his digestion procedure. Ray Bieber became a monster, and the situation was out of control. In the end, the Nighthawks skillfully worked together and took care of Monster Bieber, but they immediately faced the attack of the member from the Secret Order. More rows were scribbled away again, and the original content was impossible to read. Leonard Mitchell, who possesses a secret, was going to end the situation. Before he could, Klein, who was supposed to be doomed, killed the Sequence 7 member from the Secret Order in an inexplicable manner. That didn't affect the development of the story. Dunsmith got in touch with the Antigonus family's notebook and flipped through its content. From that point onwards, he was secretly corrupted. Having finished all his preparations, Lanavis beguiled Hood Eugen and used him to assist in his ritual. They tricked Lanavis's fiancée, Magos, to become the vessel that would carry the true creator's spawn. Lanavis had almost no possibility of success. The most serious problem was that even though Magos would be protected by the ritual's power, she wouldn't be able to withstand the sexual intercourse with the illusory projection of a deity. It would cost her life on the altar. At that moment, the kind Ince Zangwill helped Lanavis in secret. He split off half a piece of the Descendant of Death's characteristic that he obtained and planted it in Magos' body ahead of time. This is Azek's son's skull, and this tells us that it was Ince Zangwill who took it. Hood Eugen made Magos enter a semi-unconscious state, and he convinced her that the true creator's illusory projection was Lanavis. Nourished by the accumulated resentment, gloominess, and oppression of the factory district, the ritual succeeded. Magos was pregnant with the true creator's spawn. The deity saw through the coincidences, but since he wished to break through the shackles placed on him by the 7 deities, he didn't refuse. This means that the true creator knew that his spawn was part of a plan by Ince Zangwill brought forward by the series of coincidences, but since he wanted to come back into the real world, he didn't really care. Hood Eugen was contaminated. After the ritual succeeded, the mad Lanavis regained his rationality. He clearly knew that if the deity's spawn was to descend into the world, Lanavis, himself, would become one of the sacrificial offerings. How could a mortal be the father of a deity's son? This was blasphemy of the highest order. Lanavis decided to leave Tingeon ahead of time and leave clues to the Nighthawks, the mandated Punishers, and the Machinery Hive Mind so that they could resolve the repercussions of his actions. There was ultimately a price needed for lunacy. However, Lanavis didn't write the letter directly to the Beyonder squads. He thought it would make him look stupid. He decided to leave the letter in one of the houses that he rented. He pretended to be playing a game with the Beyonders from official bodies. As such, he didn't bring up Hood Eugen's contamination and brought with him everything that he had obtained. Just in case, he informed Sirius Arapis in the safest way he could. The latter didn't quite believe him, but he could faintly feel the possibility of success. Selena Wood accidentally chanced upon the real magic mirror divination incantation from her mysticism teacher, Hanaus Vincent. Her bold attempt was interrupted by Klein Moretti by coincidence. The latter successfully resolved the supernatural incident that might have caused serious casualties. The Nighthawks then investigated Hanaus Vincent, who had recently been awarded. Therefore, Dunsmith coincidentally saw a clear image of the true creator in his dream and suffered severe injuries. However, he wasn't contaminated because of what happened. That would have been noticed by the upper echelons of the Nighthawks. The injury made Dunsmith's contamination by the antagonist family's notebook worsen. His absent-mindedness and forgetfulness worsened, and he was getting closer and closer to satisfying Ince Zangwill's requirements. Many rows were scribbled away again. Seriously unbelievable. Klein Moretti noticed Ince Zangwill's secret influence and saw the Crimson Chimney. This is because he was reminded by the teacher of McCoy University's Department of History, Azik. He possesses many secrets. But even so, it's astounding enough for Klein to discover actual clues. It's unexplainable. Regardless of the reason, Ince Zangwill continued to act, and the story continues. Klein coincidentally ran into Sirius at the library and had no choice but to kill him. Hence, the clues leading to Lanavis were abruptly severed, and the discovery of the problem was delayed. Klein met Magos, but his spirituality stopped him from observing her closely. However, he didn't notice the subtle abnormality. That is logical. Our stories aren't made up randomly. He searched for the Crimson Chimney, but he always opted for a route that didn't include his target. Maybe in 2 or 3 months, when he was on the last batch, he would find the real Red Chimney House. Rows and rows of writings were scribbled away, more than all the previous rows added together. Dunsmith's problem was alleviated. His condition obviously became better. He actually mastered the acting method. And this was taught to him by Klein Moretti, who had found inspiration from Dowdy Simone and Old Neil's example. No, Ince Zangwill didn't believe that, but he could only change his original plan slightly. New elements in the story came to play. Azik decided to go to Backland in search of his lost memories. It wasn't long before Klein and Dunn found clues from Hood Eugen. In order to ensure that Tingeon City's Conservative Party and New Party would be in complete opposition, Madame Sharon, who wanted to vent the accumulated madness after her transformation, decided to take the risk and murder Member of Parliament John Maynard. Her motive wasn't strong enough, but she took action anyways. There are always times when people are not clear-minded enough, and she happened to be in that stage. Besides, she was confident that she wouldn't be discovered. Maynard's wife found the Blackthorn Security Company through the tobacco merchant Vic Roy. They didn't disappoint her, and they quickly found Madame Sharon's abnormality. Dunn Smith, who possessed power that was close to Sequence 6, decided to take action first. He passed the sealed artifact 3-0271 to Kenley. When the two of them and Klein returned to Madame Sharon's residence, Dunn attempted to pull her into a dream to control her from a distance. It was a good plan, but unfortunately, Madame Sharon happened to have the statue of the primordial demoness by her side. Hence, the Nighthawk's plan failed. Kenley reflected himself in the mirror due to his nervousness and saw himself. Madame Sharon was taken care of while Kenley died. Dunn blamed himself and consumed Kenley's beyonder characteristic as he usually did. His digestion procedure was interrupted as a result and was delayed. As such, his mental state became unstable. Under the circumstances, Leonard and Klein noticed the letter left behind by Lanavis. Magos received a baffling summoning and arrived at Zoutland Street. She entered the Blackthorn Security Company, and the baby in her stomach was at a critical point in its development. It couldn't stop the urges. Dunn made a detailed plan, a plan that was right, but he made one mistake. If he steeled his resolve to lure Magos behind Channis Gate, he would have stood a chance with the aid of the environment and the items present. If he wanted to wait for backup, he definitely shouldn't have just taken St. Selena's urn out. Unfortunately, Dunn's mind wasn't in the right place due to recent events, and he didn't think of the most critical point. A deity's son would be able to feel the threat of the saint's urn. Hence, it was triggered and started to absorb its mother's strength in a bid to be born ahead of time, even though it wasn't exactly ready. Isaac was in Backland, but he wasn't a planeswalker, so he couldn't rush back on such short notice. A few rows were scribbled away. Magos became a monster, and the fight began. With the aid of the Saint's Urn, Blood Vessel Thief, and 2 high-level charms that strangely appeared, Magos died, and the deity's son was exorcised. Dunsmith died as a result, and the power of the Saint Selena's ashes were severely damaged as well. That went perfectly with Ince Zangwill's intentions. Ince Zangwill didn't get a chance to showcase himself, but it didn't hinder him from achieving his goal. He killed Klein Moretti, the fellow who kept disrupting his plans, and he took away Saint Selena's ashes. Ince Zangwill set up a ritual with the remaining half of the characteristic of Death's descendant. He consumed Saint Selena's ashes and successfully advanced from a Sequence 5 of the Death Sequence pathway, Gatekeeper, to Sequence 4 of the Evernight Sequence pathway, Night Watcher. As such, he received godhood characteristics and became a demigod. Death pathway is Corpse Collector and Evernight pathway is Sleepless. Ince Zangwill changed from the Corpse Collector pathway to the Sleepless pathway. This is because high sequences are capable of changing pathways, as long as they are acquainted pathways or compatible with each other. When Beyonders die normally, they leave behind a Beyonder characteristic. These are equivalent to a potion that lacks the supplementary ingredients. He uses Saint Selena's ashes because she was a Sequence 4 Night Watcher when she died. Her ashes could be used as an alternative to the main ingredient of a potion because they are the remains of a person. The sun continues to shine brilliantly on the land. Nearly no one in Tinjin City realized how they narrowly escaped a huge disaster. Monster Adam Asal would be left very confused about it. This is the insane guy in the underground market. The notebook was flipped to the last page. A middle-aged man that was holding onto the book had dark blonde hair, a dark blue eye that was nearly black, a tall nose, and tightly pursed lips. His facial features were like that of a statue and didn't have a single wrinkle. He held a classic quill with a slightly pale hand and wrote a line clearly without dipping into any ink. He ended with a simple sentence. Tinjin's story ends here. The papers rustled as he closed the book, leaving only a brown cover. Back to the anime, where Leonard is recovering from his injuries. A telegram from the Holy Cathedral came through, and it says that they know who the culprit is. In the book, they specifically say to beware of Ince Zangwill and 0-08. Leonard realizes that because of the quill, things happened as they did. Leonard then shows interest in joining the Red Gloves, because he wants revenge, and because he's close to advancing to Sequence 7. We then transition to Klein's house on 2 Daffodil Street, where Melissa and Benson are waiting for his return so they can see a play together. They hear the bell ring, and Melissa opens the door. She expects Klein to be coming home, but she's met with Leonard, who holds a sad expression. In the book, he tells them directly that Klein is dead, specifically while trying to save others, and that he's a true hero. He mentions that they will receive a bereavement of £6,000. They also go to see his dead corpse inside the company building. We then cut to the funeral for Klein and Dunn. We see Dolly mourn from Backland, and soil is tossed into the grave. Melissa throws in Isaac's copper whistle, which she'd found on Klein's body. Benson accompanies Melissa as she puts down her mechanical human doll, and she sobs uncontrollably for her brother. Isaac is in the distance, saying he was too late, but he may know who the culprit was. He then Kobe's that rose all the way from the hill to the grave. We then see those affected by Klein and Dunn's deaths. Then, sunlight shines once more upon the land, and we hear whispers of Hornachus. Klein's grave has a gray fog coming out of it, and a hand pokes out. He steps into the main peak ruins and sees the vertical eye. He then arrives in the gray fog and puts his hand to his empty chest, and it starts to heal itself, replacing his lost heart. In the book, it is noted that the recovery was slower and more difficult than before. It also says that there are still some secrets behind my transmigration, but it seems like I'll only be able to resurrect another 2 times at most, not anymore. Anyways, the structure and throne rebuild themselves, symbolizing Klein's return. Klein wonders what he even is now, perhaps an evil spirit who seeks revenge. He then understands that the man behind this was Ince Zangwill, and that the coincidences that have been happening were due to 0-08's ability, and that it writes down things that are bound to happen within reason. Zangwell's goal the entire time was to get Saint Selena's ashes to advance to Sequence 4 and become a demigod. Nearly everything was written so that it would lead him to getting the ashes. Thus, his target was Dunn, not necessarily Klein, as Dunn was the only one who could access Saint Selena's ashes besides the Holy Cathedral. Klein then wants to plan out his revenge, so he divines Zangwell's current city, Lanavis's current location, and my opportunities of becoming powerful, and they all land on Backland. Klein then pays his respects to Dunn. He lights his pipe and leaves the cemetery. Now, Klein has to deal with the fact that he's supposed to be dead. He can't just go back to his normal life. He stands opposite of his house, behind a tree. Klein sees his siblings inside the window and wants to go say something, but he stops himself. He follows Benson and Melissa to the circus. Then, Melissa notices flowers being conjured beneath her. They go up into the air and explode into confetti. A clown starts walking towards them, conjuring flowers out of thin air. It was a Seville chrysanthemum. The clown brought the flower before Melissa and Benson. The flower was golden in color and symbolized happiness. Melissa and Benson looked at the clown in a daze. All they saw was a wide smile plastered over the pastel face. It was a happy smile, an exaggerated smile, a ridiculous smile. Now, this ending is not only so bittersweet, but also has another meaning. It's revealed in the chapter following the end of the Volume 1 that the acting principle for clown is actually being performed here. Although being capable of knowing a little about fate, one remains helpless towards fate. Therefore, one might as well use a smiling face to hide all the pain, sorrow, confusion, and depression. This is the true essence of a clown, and he could feel the potion digest a little by doing this. There's a post-credit scene where it shows us that Klein has arrived in Backland. He knocks on a door, and the woman inside opens and asks him his name. So, what happened in this episode? Klein, Dunn, and Leonard defeat Magos and the True Creator's spawn. Dunsmith sacrifices himself, and Klein Moretti is killed by Zangwell. After the fight, Leonard decides to try to join the Red Gloves and advance his sequence. We learn that Zangwell manipulated nearly everything that's happened so far, all so that he could get Saint Selena's ashes to advance to Sequence 4 Night Watcher, becoming a demigod. Dunn and Klein are buried in the cemetery. Klein is resurrected in a similar way to his original transmigration, and has at maximum 2 more revives. Klein sets his sight on Backland after performing divinations in relation to Zangwell and Lanavis's locations, as well as where he will have opportunities to become stronger. Klein bids his family farewell in a very bittersweet way, and discovers the acting principle of clown. Klein travels to Backland and takes on the new identity of Sherlock Moriarty. And that's the end of Lord of the Mysteries Season 1. Truly a masterpiece in my book. I mean, like I've said in previous videos, I really wish I had a couple more episodes to flesh out the pacing more, but I mean, it's okay. The series truly made an impact on me, and I've had so much fun reading it and enjoying the anime. It really does so many scenes just so well, and it's truly incredible to see the pages come to life in anime form. I can't wait to see the Kalangos arc next year, since that story takes place during Volume 1 as well, although it doesn't really involve Klein too much. And even though it doesn't, it still is just such a great arc. I'm just so excited to see Audrey's friends, Zio Derecha and Forrest Wall, to name a few, because they do not show up at all in Season 1, even though they should. And I'm also more excited to see, Derek, the son, since he has so much development in the book, and I'm excited to see how they do the City of Silver. Now, what is there to look forward to in Season 2? We know that Klein is taking on a new persona, leaving Tingen and his family behind so that he can continue on his journey. But, where does he go from here? As someone who's already finished Volume 2, I'll try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. The name Sherlock Moriarty should already give you a basic idea of what Klein's new identity is. He clearly outlines his goals at the end of Episode 13, so you can expect him to try to follow through on that in any way that he can. So many new characters will be introduced, and a couple of them have actually become some of my favorites, like Miss Bodyguard. And reading Volume 2 has me just so excited for what's to come. And if you don't plan on reading it, just take my word that if they adapt it correctly, then it'll be incredible. Season 2 is said to be around 30 episodes in length and will have zero drop in quality, as said by the directors. Chapter wise, it's around the same length as Volume 1, maybe just like a little bit longer. But I feel like it just so much more stuff happens in Volume 2, so that's probably why the episode count is going to be way longer. Anyways, that's all from me. I hope that this video helped you understand the last episode better, as well as gave you a better understanding of what's actually written with 0-08 and what it all means for the future. I may make more videos on Lord of the Mysteries in the future, but they will likely be based on the novel since there's no more anime as of now to talk about. See you guys then.